Good morning, children. For 10th standard, we are going to continue with the chapter on the nervous system. And in the last class, we were discussing about the brain. Okay, I told you about the different parts of the nervous system. If you remember, that nervous system is divided into the central nervous system, the peripheral nervous system, and the autonomic nervous system. So in the central nervous system, there are two parts. One part is the brain, and the second part is the spinal cord. Now the brain is divided into three parts: the forebrain, the midbrain, and the hindbrain. The forebrain is called the prosencephalon, midbrain is called the mesencephalon, and hindbrain is called the rhombencephalon. Now in the forebrain, that forebrain, there is a lobe called the olfactory lobe. Olfactory lobes are two finger-like projections which are found at the base of the brain. You cannot see that. If you see the olfactory lobes, they are just below the brain. That means if you invert the brain, they are found on the lower surface of the brain, two finger-like projections, and those are the olfactory lobes. So the function of the olfactory lobe is basically carrying the sensation of the smell. So you can see here in the diagram I am showing you. You see that this is the inverted portion of the brain. This is the olfactory lobes. You can see two finger-like projections are there. These two finger-like projections are the olfactory lobe. They are carrying the sensation. So it is inverted from it. This is the cerebellum, and this is the spinal cord which is emerging here. And all these are the nerve fibers which are emerging from the base of the brain. These nerves are called the cranial nerves. And this is the largest portion of the brain. And this largest portion of the brain, you can see they are highly convoluted. These raised portions are called the gyrus, and the depressed portions are called the sulcus. So the brain is divided into two parts. If you see your own brain, then this is the right part. So we say that there are two lobes, the right cerebral lobe and the left cerebral lobe. So if you invert, we are seeing inverted from. So in inverted from, if you see that this will be the right and this will be the left cerebral lobe. And the cerebral lobe are here connected with a band of nerve fibers which is called the corpus callosum. The corpus callosum is a band of nerve fiber connecting the two cerebral lobes. Now, so the olfactory lobe is the first part of the brain or the forebrain. The second part of the brain is the cerebrum, which I told, which is the largest portion of the brain, and the function of the cerebrum is varied. It has various types of function. What are the functions of cerebrum? Like first function is it carries various types of sensation, like sense of vision, which is found in the occipital lobe at the back of the brain. Then sense of taste, or what you call the gustatory receptors are there, are not receptors, helps in the sensation of the taste. In audition, in hearing, various types of somatoaesthetic sensors and motor responses. Okay, so sensory responses and motor actions also, these are also located in the brain. Plus there are certain association areas also which are located in the cerebral hemisphere. Now another function, very important function of the cerebrum is that it carries the sensation of your conscious thinking and subconscious thinking. Conscious thinking is something which you are thinking, voluntarily, willingly you think something, that is a conscious thinking. And some of the thinking is there which we don't show it outside, but we think from inside. That's called a subconscious thinking. Suppose I am giving you a lecture on nervous system. You are not interested from inside. So that is your subconscious thinking. You are not paying your attention. That you are showing that you are externally, you are listening to me, but you are not listening. So that's a subconscious thinking. This type of subconscious thinking is also there, and through hypnosis, subconscious thinking can also be taken out from a person's brain. Okay. Now that is all the functions of cerebrum. So you can in totality you can say that what are the functions, like the motor functions, the various types of sensory functions like vision, like hearing, like smelling, like tasting, all these different parts, somatoaesthetic senses plus motor responses, conscious and subconscious thinking. Now the third part is called the Diencephalon. In Diencephalon, this part consists of three parts. One is called the Epithalamus. Usually epithalamus contains endocrine organ called the pineal body, and this pineal body function is secretion of a hormone called melatonin. And this melatonin has varied function, like it helps in creating the various types of sleep and awake responses, that the time when we sleep, a time is there when we are awake. These responses are usually done by this help of the melatonin secretion. And also the different types of biological clock that goes inside our body, along with the limbic system, they do this. Now there is another part called the thalamus. The thalamus is actually a continuity between the forebrain, the cerebrum, and the lower part. So it carries various types of sensation. The thalamus is the region which is like a relay center, you can say, between the cerebrum and other parts of the brain. And the third part is called the hypothalamus. So just below the thalamus is the hypothalamus. Hypo means lower. So lower to the thalamus is the hypothalamus. Now hypothalamus has a wide range of functions. Like for example, it is a place where you have the different types of involuntary actions. Okay, like we say the autonomic control center. Okay, like the digestive system, like the respiratory system, the size of the pupil, how all this autonomic nervous system which are controlled by various types of nerves. This is controlled in the region of the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is also the function called the emotional behavior. What we call there's a system called the limbic system, and with this limbic system, they help us in giving us the response of the anger or emotions. All these activities are in this particular area. It also helps in regulation of the temperature. Hypothalamus is the temperature regulation center. You have the vasomotor center here, which can cause the vasodilation and vasoconstriction. In case of heat, the vasodilation occurs, the blood vessels comes to the surface of the body, giving out the the heat. And vasoconstriction is that when the blood vessels constrict, goes deep inside the muscles, and they conserve the body heat. That is the main function of the regulation of the temperature. And also the heat retention mechanism is there, like shivering and all these things, which are generally we find it during fever and all. That is how to mechanically stimulate and help in the formation of heat if your body gets cold. Now there is also regulation of the food intake, the water balance. This is one of the important functions, the osmoregulations. There are osmoreceptors here, which helps in regulation of this water balance and the balance of the ionic concentration of the salts. It also helps in the sleep-wake cycles. That what we call the circadian rhythm, the biological clock in the limbic system. Along with the limbic system, that biological clock is controlled here. And hypothalamus has another very important function, which we call the endocrine function. It is a part of the nervous system, but most of the releasing factors, the hormones which are controlling the pituitary, they are controlled by the hypothalamus. So you can say hypothalamus is like a master of the master gland. We call pituitary the master gland, and hypothalamus is the master of the master gland. That means it controls the pituitary with help of neurohormones. And there are various types of neurohormones like thyroid releasing factor, somatotropic releasing factor, corticotropic releasing factor. All these hormones are secreted from here. Now in brain there is a part called the brain stem. Now what is the brain stem? Actually you see the spinal cord is like a stem, but the epithalamus, the hypothalamus and the pons together, particularly the pons and the hypothalamus and this pons, medulla and epithalamus, these three together is called the brain stem. So generally epithalamus is not taught in 10th standard, but you can, if you are asked what is the brain stem, you can say the pons and the medulla forms a part of the brain stem. And what is the function of the pons? The pons is actually the lower part of the cerebellum. So pons actually what it does, it correlates the function between the two cerebellar lobes. Cerebellum, you know, that's part of the posterior brain, but its main function is coordinating of the skeletal muscles as well as balancing. So in between the right cerebellar lobe and the left cerebellar lobe, the function of this pons is the correlation and the coordination between this right lobe and the left lobe. Now there is another very important organ which is called the medulla oblongata. Now what is the function of the medulla oblongata? Now this is the region where actually, you know, the cardiac center is located here, the vasomotor center and the respiratory centers are located in the medulla. So most of the involuntary actions like you know, the cardiac center which controls your heart rate, heartbeat, this is located in the medulla oblongata. Your respiratory center, the breathing and the respiration, that is controlled in the medulla oblongata, and as well as the vasomotor center which controls your vasoconstriction and vasodilation, that is also located in the hypothalamus. Now the brain is inside, you know, there is a region which is called, there's a cavity inside the brain, and those are called the ventricles. And if you see that the right lobe of the cerebrum and the left lobe of the cerebrum, there are two ventricles. These are called the lateral ventricle. So one is called the first ventricle, the second one is called the second ventricle. The first and the second ventricle, they are connected with a small duct, and there is a small duct called foramen of Monro that is continued to the third ventricle. And from the third ventricle to the fourth ventricle is connected with another small duct called the aqueduct of Sylvius. So this actually, what are the contained in this ventricles? The ventricles usually contain the cerebrospinal fluid which is formed from the choroid plexus. There is an anterior and posterior choroid plexus. This is the region. So the roof of the third ventricle, actually there are types of cell called the ependymal cells, and these ependymal cells secrete a fluid called the cerebrospinal fluid. This fluid actually is found inside the ventricle and through the in the foramen of the, in the third ventricle, in the lateral ventricle, in the fourth ventricle, in the aqueduct of Sylvius, and all along in the center of the spinal cord through a central canal. It is also located there. And outside the brain also, they are located in the subdural space, in the subarachnoid space, just below the durameter and the arachnoid meter. It is located on the covering the brain. It's like a shock absorber. It supplies nutrients and also takes away the excretory substance from the brain. So the cerebrospinal fluid is actually bathing the whole brain with this, and the function of the cerebrospinal fluid we are going to study in the next class. Till then, thank you very much for hearing. Stay safe, and we'll meet again in the next class. Thank you very much.